And we're live. Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm your loving host, Shorty. And today, because it's a really bright, glorious June the 1st, we're going to talk about a deep, dark, disturbing horror comic book, The Closet by James Tynion. And yeah, you kind of need to know that I'm a James Tynion fan, I suppose. I can't really just be saying, oh, wow, this is just a script comic. You should totally check out this new and crazy inventive writer. It's like, no, I've been a fan of his for a while. Not since he started. There was a point when he was doing mid-grade stuff, which was perfectly serviceable, but not fantastic. And then something happened, and I think there was a change in confidence, a realization of what he could do well. And since then, he's been a writer I've been paying attention to. This one I ordered, even though when I first put it through, literally nobody in my comic book store cared about it. I since got to the massive, huge numbers of literally one of my regular customers has as a pull. But I'm still happy I picked it up because it brings the scary, which is really nice for a horror comic book. Some don't. Some are gory. And some are kind of creepy and off-putting, which is perfectly fine. I like creepy and off-putting. I actually quite like gory at times, but I like scaring more. That's what I go for when it comes to horror. I was talking to a friend of mine about Ghost Rider recently, how there is so much really cool horror aspects to that comic book, but it's let down by still being a mainstream Marvel release. Tynion has actually done quite a good job of distancing himself from some of the bigger publishers, gone out his own way, doing his Substack thing, and then picking things from his own imprints to put out there to companies like Image, which is what this is. And it allows him a little bit more freedom. Just doing 3 issues, quite solid page count per issue, and he can kind of take his time with it. That taking this time is one of the reasons why there's a couple of bits. Well, no, not even a couple bits. There's one bit which doesn't quite work for me. And it's frustrating when you consider everything else is done really, really well. And it comes down to the artwork. Because the artwork absolutely grabbed me, captivated me in the first couple of pages. It is brilliantly done. It is simple when it needs to be, but has all the detail required. I mean, that shot of just the bar is fantastic. The slight close-up of the guy finishing his beer. I like the 3-point perspective. I like the lighting. I like the use of negative space, and I even really like the coloring. I was trying to remember where I'd seen coloring like this before, and I think it was the Me You Love in the Dark, where there's an almost like organic way of applying coloring, like spattering effect or even fingerprints, as if the paint has been smeared on. But it still looks digital, but it looks like a very good facsimile of organic, more realistic coloring. And I actually absolutely love it. It's genuinely good. The fact that they play around with lightness and dark basically means you don't get too much of a worry of occasional pages or panels where you don't have background detail. It makes sense. It's not like one shot there just in a well-lit kitchen and then the next there is nothing behind them. They're in a dark bar and the lighting is only really around the bar and in a couple of booths. So sometimes the angle is just blackness behind them, or at least darkness. And it's effective. It's really, really good. But it's the level of detail which then becomes a slight problem later on because of this wonderful moment of a child falling asleep with the closet open and the light on inside, and the gradual darkening of vision, and then close-ups on the child's eyes as they're getting heavy. Well, the lids are getting heavier and he's falling asleep, and it takes its absolutely sweet time getting to the point, which I usually love. In fact, I'd still like it in this, but the simplistic nature of the line work and the shadow and the shading kind of means there isn't a lot to arrest your vision. You don't have to spend long dwelling on the page or dwelling on the panel to get everything that you need to. I think sometimes you can put a little bit more detail on as necessary. I'm reminded of Pentagram of Horror, which did have a lot of fine detail when it was necessary, and it drew your eyes to various parts of the panel and parts of the page. In a way that this one, it just allows you to kind of go over it. And that means that attempt to slow it down, to build up for something, actually just feels a little bit quicker than I think it should have done. Not the end of the world. It's still a beautiful comic book and really well written. Your main protagonist is the father of the child, who is kind of shiftless, doesn't really pay that much attention, makes a lot of mistakes. These mistakes are kind of not necessarily well-meaning mistakes, they're lazy mistakes. There is so little malice in this guy's life, but he still clearly is coming across as a bad guy. And I like the fact that it's not just done as bad father or a good father doing stuff in a bad situation. Him and his wife have problems and they're dealing with it in a bad way. And the kid is kind of in the middle of it all, uses a little bit of ammunition in what will certainly be a terrible divorce when it happens. But how it's written is fantastic. The characters are very human. They are flawed and interesting, and you can see how human those flaws are. There's a conversation about like he got into an argument with his wife because he had some stuff left from a previous relationship, and he'd said he'd got rid of it, and it wasn't that he'd chosen to keep it and lied. He just basically thought he'd got rid of it and didn't bother checking because it was like, well, what does it matter? It's just some books. That kind of very realistic mistake that people will make. But when there is larger problems going on in a relationship, these mistakes can look worse and they can be picked on and can be used as far more effective ammunition. Love that down-to-earth writing style. I think it adds so much to what is a genuinely good, scary comic book. And you may notice one thing I've not talked about in this review at all is the scary, because I don't want to spoil anything, and I do think it's better if you actually sit and read this one yourself. If you're looking for a comic book, I'd give it a try. For the rest of the week, I'm really not sure what I'm going to review. There's some kind of tie-in event stuff, but I don't think I've got anything else spare, which I've got an issue 1 to read and review. We'll see how it goes, but if I don't see you again for the rest of the week, I do apologize. Until I see you back again, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.